Hello everyone, this is Naerina from 40k Theories, and welcome to this new episode of 40k Lore for Newcomers. For this episode, we will be taking a brief look at the largest military force within the Imperium, the Astra Militarum. As always, this is a brief overview for certain events, and as such, they will have in-depth videos dedicated to them in the future. So, without further ado, let's begin.
A good soldier obeys without question. A good officer commands without doubt.
The Astra Militarum, also known more commonly as the Imperial Guard, is the largest military force within the entirety of the Imperium. It is comprised of billions of men and women from hundreds of thousands of worlds across the galaxy, all drawn from different races and cultures. Some of these warriors are barbaric and savage denizens of feral death worlds, while others are recruited from noble houses or more civilized worlds. Whatever their origin, these men and women will fight and die in the name of the Emperor of Mankind. While not as well equipped or blessed with the genetic augmentation of the superhuman warriors of the Adeptus Astartes, the warriors of the Astra Militarum are no less dangerous on the battlefield. If a Space Marine strike force is a surgical scalpel used to deliver a precise blow, then the forces of the Imperial Guard are a sledgehammer, using the sheer weight of numbers of their infantry combined with the brutal and devastating firepower of their tanks and artillery to pummel the enemies of mankind into submission.
They have seen more death and ruin than another soldier sees in 10 lifetimes.
The origin of the Astra Militarum lies during the earliest days of the Great Crusade with the organization known as the Imperialis Auxilia, or Imperial Army. They were founded primarily as a supporting force for the Legionis Astartes, as well as to garrison worlds conquered and reclaimed in the name of the Emperor of Mankind, due to the sheer amount of manpower the Auxilia could draw on in comparison to the Space Marine legions. The most elite members of the Imperial Army were the Solar Auxilia, whose recruits were drawn exclusively from the Sol system and were considered to be second only to the Space Marine legions in terms of skill and firepower. Not only were the Solar Auxilia the most highly trained and disciplined, but also the best equipped of the various forces within the Imperial Army, armed with las rifles and carapace armor, compared to the more standard issue lasgun and flak armor utilized by other members of the army. In addition to immense numbers of infantry regiments and tanks, the Imperial Army also had a vast fleet, known as the Imperialis Armada, which not only ferried infantry to new combat zones, but also was responsible for void warfare against independent human empires and Xenos civilizations alike. During the Great Crusade, commanders of the Imperial Army had authority over both the Auxilia and the Armada, though they in turn always answered to any Astartes present alongside them. But following the events of the civil war known as the Horus Heresy, the Imperial Army underwent a restructuring process. The Auxilia and Armada are separated into two separate entities, the Imperial Guard and the Imperial Navy. Since they are now separate organizations, commanders within the Astra Militarum hold no authority over naval forces, and conversely, admirals of the Navy hold no authority over the infantry forces of the Guard.
Any Cadian who can't field strip his own lasgun by age 10 was born on the wrong planet.
Recruitment for the Astra Militarum will typically vary from world to world. Some regiments, such as the firstborn regiments from the world of Vostroya, will be recruited from the firstborn children of the Vostroyan families. Others will be drawn from the ranks of the world's PDF or Planetary Defense Force. Other worlds still will simply have their recruits drafted at the will of their world's planetary governor. Once a regiment has been raised, they will typically not receive any sort of reinforcement to replenish losses incurred in battle. There are a few notable exceptions, such as the aforementioned Vostroyan Firstborn regiments, who receive a steady stream of reinforcements, regardless of the logistical difficulties involved. In addition, in some instances, a regiment of guardsmen may be allowed to draw recruits from the local population, for example, if the regiment is tasked with garrisoning a world. The average guardsman is armed with a standard-issue lasgun and given flak armor for protection, while some members of a squad will be trained to use specialist weaponry such as a flamer or plasma guns, and others will be paired up to form heavy weapons teams to operate devastating weaponry such as heavy bolters and las cannons. The typical lifespan for a brand new recruit into the ranks of the Astra Militarum is approximately 15 Terran Standard hours into the first deployment. Many raw recruits will not see their second, but those who do will become hardened and skilled soldiers. There are many different types of regiment used by the Astra Militarum. These include line infantry regiments, which are effectively the closest to a typical guardsman regiment, being predominantly frontline infantry reinforced with tanks and artillery. Mechanized infantry regiments, where every unit in the regiment features a dedicated transport vehicle, such as the Chimera APC, and will be used for a rapid reinforcement role. Armored regiments, which typically consist of combat tanks such as the Lehman Russ, Hellhound, and even super heavy units such as the mighty Baneblade. Artillery regiments, which are used for devastating the enemy with long-range firepower, combining relatively few infantry units and large amounts of firepower, such as the Basilisk and Manticore weapon platforms. There are many other different types of regiment, such as reconnaissance and cavalry, with some even unique to specific worlds. There are so many men and women within the Astra Militarum that not even the Departmentum Unitorum, the branch of the Administratum tasked with supply, command and administration of the Imperial Guard, are aware with how many men and women are under arms at any given time. In addition to these typical regiments, there are also elite shock troopers, known as the Tempestus Scions, or simply as stormtroopers to the common folk of the Imperium. Unlike standard guardsmen, stormtroopers are equipped more akin to the old solar auxilia of the Imperial army, with carapace armor and las rifles. They are typically recruited from the orphaned children of Imperial officers and nobility taken from ecclesiastical school-cum-orphanages known as the Schola Progenium, at a relatively young age, where they will undergo an intense and brutal training regimen to train them into elite soldiers. Incidentally, inductees into the Departmentum Unitorum's commissariat are also recruited from the Schola Progenium and are trained to instill the fear of the Emperor into a regiment, executing anyone who shows a sign of heresy or cowardice. In addition, they also hold authority over all branches of the Imperium's military forces, with the exception of the Adeptus Astartes, Adeptus Sororitas, and the armies of the Adeptus Mechanicus. When regiments suffer enough casualties, they will typically be absorbed into another regiment entirely, or be merged with another regiment that had also suffered tremendous casualties to create a new one entirely. But one of the few ways for a regiment to receive reinforcement to replenish lost numbers is through the implementation of White Shields. White Shields are the children of Imperial Guard troops. While some, like those of the Kadian Shock Troopers, are conscripted from youth to form their own military units, Those children sired by guardsmen within most regiments will be raised inside the regiment itself. They will be educated by the members of the regiment, even being brought to the battlefield as a part of their training. Once they have proved themselves capable enough, they will be promoted into fully fledged guardsmen, where they will be considered as adults and on equal terms with the other troops in their regiment. There are hundreds of notable regiments of the Astra Militarum, including the likes of the Catachan Jungle Fighters, Valhallan Ice Warriors, and the Death Corps of Krieg, who will be the subject of their own videos in the future.
The Sergeant Major asked me what my job was, and I said it was to, do what I was told. He said I was a genius and gave me another medal. Oh, he likes the Imperial Guard.
While typical humans are by far the most common type of recruit within the Imperial Guard, the Astra Militarum as a whole does not use them exclusively. Regiments can and will be drawn and raised from ABHUMAN stock. These ABHUMANs are species that had evolved from humanity into larger, smaller, or otherwise different forms, and are formed into specialized units. Ratlings are a diminutive species recruited from agricultural worlds, with Orn's world being the most notable. They are generally disliked by many within the Astra Militarum due to their scheming, lecherous, and thieving behavior, though their ability to acquire contraband such as extra rations or alcohol stops many a guardsman from harming these pests. However, Ratlings have two desirable traits: the ability to cook a good meal out of anything and being exceptionally good shots. The latter, combined with their small size, makes them perfect for the role of a sniper. Ogrins, by contrast, are dim-witted by human standards, but compensate for this for sheer size and brute strength. While a Ratling may only grow to approximately a meter or so in height, Ogrins can grow on average anywhere between 2.5 to 3 meters both in height and width. Ogrins are used as frontline assault and close combat troops, and are armed with the short-ranged Ripper gun, so named due to the recoil being capable of ripping a man's arm off completely. The reason for the short range of the weapon is due to an Ogrin's instincts being to charge directly into melee combat, and they will frequently use their guns as cudgels against the enemy, oftentimes more often than shooting them. Certain Ogrins will also be used by officers, such as generals or commissars, as bodyguards. These, along with those individuals designated to lead their squads, will undergo a neurological augmentation process called BONE, which stands for Biochemical Ogrin Neutral Enhancement, giving them the nickname of Boneheads as a result. Other ABHUMANs that are recruited into the Astra Militarum include the robust squats and savage beastmen, though not to the same extent as seen with Ogrins and Ratlings. And that concludes this edition of 40k Lore for Newcomers. If you liked this video, consider supporting us on Patreon. If you're new to 40k, we hope you learned something. Until next time, this has been Naerina from 40k Theories, and we'll see you again.
I am so sorry you have to listen through all these takes. I just think, like, because a general could be anything, I figured I'd try 2 or 3 different things and see how they do. And then I decided to go full goblin. So yeah, if you ever need a Gretchen for something, then I should give it a go, boss. I don't know. That might be awful, but we'll see.